I didn't plan to run. I told myself it was a fresh start, a new chapter, whatever soft name people give to escaping with quiet desperation. But when I boarded that train in Chicago, heading west towards Seattle, I wasn't chasing anything. I was just trying to leave behind everything that had slowly broken me over the last 2 years. I booked a sleeper car because I needed space to breathe, to think. Just me, a sliding door, and miles of silence between my past and whatever was waiting out there in Washington. The first day passed in a kind of fog. I watched landscapes shift through the window, green, brown, gray, and let the rhythm of the train pull me into something like peace. That night, somewhere past North Dakota, I was drifting in and out of sleep when I heard it, faint, like a child crying in another room. Soft, muffled sobbing, just on the other side of my compartment wall. At first, I thought maybe I was dreaming, but it went on long enough that I sat up, straining to hear. Then silence. Not even footsteps. I told myself someone was having a hard night, same as me. I lay back down and tried not to let my imagination get carried away. The next morning, in the dining car, I met her. She sat across from me without asking. Pale blue sweater, stringy white hair pulled into a loose braid, hands that looked like they trembled but never actually did. "You're traveling alone," she said, not quite a question. I nodded, unsure how to respond. Something about her voice was still. Not warm, not cold either. Just measured, like everything she said was practiced. We made small talk, where I was headed, how long the ride was. She never gave any direct answers about herself. When I asked her name, she smiled thinly and said, "Names are such funny things, don't you think? They lose their meaning when no one says them out loud anymore." Then she launched into a story about a farmhouse she once lived in, surrounded by lavender fields. No context, no timeline, just started talking like we were already mid-conversation. I saw her again later that afternoon in the observation car. I tried not to sit near her, but she was already watching me, like she'd been waiting. This time, she talked about a girl she used to know. A girl who never learned to lie the right way, who always got caught because she forgot that truth doesn't matter as much as tone. "She ruined everything for herself," the woman said, staring out the window. "Cried wolf too many times. People stopped listening. It was a shame." I asked, softly, "Was that your daughter?" She turned her eyes to mine, sharp and clear. "No, just someone I watched fall apart." She said it like she'd watched from a distance, but there was something about her face, that quiet satisfaction, that told me she'd been closer than that. That night, I couldn't sleep. The train rocked on through Montana, surrounded by flat nothingness. The compartment walls felt thinner somehow. I didn't hear crying this time, but I could sense her. In the next room, awake, sitting in the dark. The next morning, she joined me again at breakfast. She didn't eat, just drank black coffee and talked. "I used to be very charming," she said. "People trusted me. It's funny how easy it is to make someone think you care." I asked her again, "What's your name?" She smiled like I told a joke. "You know, someone once said names have power, that if you give yours to the wrong person, they can do things to it, twist it, ruin it." Then she started talking about a man who lost everything after marrying the wrong woman. She didn't yell. She didn't hit. She just chipped away at him, bit by bit, until he wasn't anything anymore. I didn't ask if it was her. I already knew. There was something eerie about the way she spoke. No remorse, no pride either. Just this clinical reflection. Like she was reading from a file she'd memorized. I told myself I could ignore it. We'd reach Seattle in 2 days. I'd never have to see her again. But it got harder and harder to breathe when she was near. Every glance from her felt like a needle, pressing into skin but never drawing blood. She'd watch me read, or sip tea, or stare out the window, and when I'd look up, she'd just smile, like we shared a secret I hadn't agreed to keep. The worst moment came in the lounge car. It was late. Only a few people were still awake. She sat next to me and whispered something I still can't fully make sense of. She said, "You know, I used to sit with women like you, quiet ones, sad ones, and I'd listen to everything they said. Every hope, every regret. It made it easier in the end." "In the end?" I asked. She didn't answer, just tilted her head and watched me like I was a story she'd already finished reading. I got up and left without a word. That night, I locked my sleeper compartment. I know it sounds paranoid, but I had to. I pushed a duffel bag against the door, just in case. The final day dragged like a fever dream. I avoided the dining car, stayed in my compartment, barely ate. But sometime after Spokane, there was a knock at my door. Not loud, just deliberate. I didn't answer. I sat perfectly still, holding my breath like a child playing hide and seek. After a moment, I heard her voice. "I hope you get where you're going," she said through the door. "But remember, some people carry their cages with them." Her footsteps drifted away, and I didn't see her again. When the train pulled into Seattle, I waited until most of the passengers had disembarked before stepping onto the platform. The air smelled like sea salt and cold metal. I looked around, but she was gone. No one saw her leave. No one even seemed to remember her. I asked a staff member, a woman with tired eyes and a clipboard, if she could check who had been in the compartment next to mine. She blinked at the screen. She said, "That room wasn't booked. Sleeper cars weren't full." I stood there for a long time, not sure what to say. I know what I heard. I know what I saw. I didn't imagine the way she made me feel. But maybe that was the point. Maybe some people don't need names to leave a mark. Maybe all they need is someone to listen, someone to carry the weight of what they've done, even if just for a few days on a train no one remembers riding. People think driving a freight train is boring, just tracks and time, straight lines, long nights, quiet cabins. But you learn to love the silence. You get used to the hum beneath your boots and the wind brushing the sides of the engine. There's something peaceful about being alone out there, something clean, predictable. At least that's how it used to feel. Back in September of 2019, I was running night hauls through the flatlands west of North Platte. I'd done the route 100 times. Nothing but fields and barbed wire, the occasional deer, a closed-down grain elevator, a half-lit crossing. That stretch between mile marker 80 and 90? Dead quiet. No houses, no real towns, just dirt roads and prairie. You'd be lucky to get a single bar of signal out there. I had a routine. Thermos of black coffee, lunch in a cooler behind the seat, dashcam always recording just in case. I didn't expect anything unusual that night. And if you told me how things were going to go, I probably would have laughed it off. Around 2:12 a.m., just past mile marker 83, I saw something on the tracks. I thought it was trash at first. Maybe a tarp or a bag that blew out of someone's truck. But as the high beams hit it, I realized it was a man. He was lying flat on his back across the rails, arms spread, legs together, like he was waiting. I yanked the brake. People don't realize how long it takes to stop a freight train. You're dragging tons of steel behind you. The wheels locked, and I felt the vibrations all the way up my spine as we screamed forward. But I already knew it was too late. I felt the impact more than I heard it, a sickening jolt, like hitting a deer at full speed, only heavier. When we finally stopped, I climbed down, hands shaking, heart pounding in my ears. There was no point in checking for a pulse. He was gone. His body, I won't describe it, I still see it when I close my eyes. The county sheriff arrived about 40 minutes later. A few more deputies. One of them made me sit in the cab and drink water while they walked the scene. Eventually, they told me it looked like suicide. No ID on the guy, just a torn jacket, scuffed work boots, and a half-empty water bottle in his pocket. They said sometimes people wander out here when they don't want to be found. Told me to go home and rest. But something felt off. It wasn't just the way he was lying so perfectly still. It was his arms, how they were out like that, palms up. Like he didn't put himself there. Like someone placed him. When I got home, I couldn't sleep. I watched the footage from my dashcam. And that's when I saw it. At 2:11 and 44 seconds a.m., just before my headlights hit the figure, the frame caught a glimpse of his hands. His wrists. He wasn't moving. Not even twitching. And his wrists were bound with zip ties. I paused the video. Zoomed in. Rewound. Played it again and again. Those weren't ordinary ties. They were the kind cops use. Thick, black, high-tension, professional grade. Tied tight. I could see the plastic biting into his skin. I called the sheriff's office. Told them what I saw. The woman on the line said they'd looked the body over already. And if there was evidence of foul play, they'd have noted it. I asked if I could send the footage. She said I was welcome to, but their report already listed the cause of death as suicide. No further investigation planned. I emailed it anyway. Never got a response. I tried to let it go. Told myself maybe I was seeing things. Maybe it was just shadow and glare. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. I pulled up news reports, county logs, anything I could find about train-related deaths near mile marker 83. And that's when I realized mine wasn't the first. In the past 18 months, there had been 5 other deaths reported near the same stretch of track. All at night. All ruled suicides. No identification found on any of the victims. Most were described as transient. Drifters. Nothing suspicious, they said. But I looked up every one of them, and in every case there was a mention, sometimes just a single line in the report, about arms spread or unusual positioning. I tried contacting someone higher up, sent my footage and my notes to a private investigator I found online. He called me once, said he'd look into it. I never heard from him again. Then things started getting strange. A week after the incident, I got a manila envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a printed photo, grainy, black and white. It was a shot of the tracks. From behind. My train was visible in the frame. But here's the part that made my stomach twist. In the foreground, standing off to the side of the tracks, was a person in what looked like a county sheriff's jacket. Face turned away from the camera. Standing still, hands at their sides, watching my train roll toward the spot where the man had been lying. I flipped the photo over. Nothing. No note. No timestamp. No way to trace where it came from. I called the sheriff's office again. Asked if any of their deputies were out near mile marker 83 the night of the incident, maybe before my train passed through. The woman checked the logs. Said no, nobody was assigned to that area. She asked why I was asking, and I told her I'd received an anonymous photo. She asked me to bring it in. I didn't. I kept it in a drawer by my bed. A few nights later, I started having trouble sleeping. Every time I drifted off, I'd dream of the tracks. The man's face. But in the dreams, he wasn't lying still. He was staring up at me. Not angry, just hollow, like he wanted me to understand something. I drove that route twice more before I asked for a transfer. Couldn't take it. Every time I passed mile marker 83, I felt like I was being watched. I know how that sounds, but you don't forget a feeling like that. Right before I left, I talked to another engineer at the yard. Older guy, been around since the 80s. I asked if he'd ever seen anything strange out west of North Platte. His face tightened. He took a sip of his coffee and said, "You ever wonder why they don't put cameras on the back ends of those trains?" I asked what he meant. He said sometimes it's better not to know who's following you. That was all he said. I haven't worked a night haul since. Moved closer to Lincoln. Took a job in the yard. Day shifts only. Sometimes I still check the news, just to see if anything else happened out there. Last I checked, there was another incident. March 2020. Same place. Same time of night. Another John Doe. Suicide, they said. But here's the part that haunts me most. When they found him, his wrists were bound. And this time, his mouth was zip-tied shut too. I've worked on the rails for going on 15 years now, and I've seen a lot. Busted couplers, drunks passed out by the tracks, even a moose hit broadside near Hever once. But nothing comes close to what happened out by the section house. Not even close. This was about 5 years back during maintenance season. We were stationed near an old section house in rural Montana. Remote as hell, nothing but pines, hills, and 30 miles of bad road between us and the nearest store. The section house itself was long out of use, just a sun-bleached shell of what used to be a bunkhouse for railroad workers. We were just using the siding and camping in company trailers. That week, we had a greenhorn on the crew, Jesse Lorne. Young guy, maybe 23, real respectful, asked good questions, didn't act like he knew everything. Reminded me of myself when I first started, only quieter. It was his third night with us when he first saw something. That evening we'd wrapped up around dusk, just light enough to pack up without flashlights, but too late to make a fire or linger long outside. I remember Jesse looked jittery, kept glancing up the hill behind the tree line. I figured maybe he heard a coyote or something. That sound can get under your skin when you're not used to being out this far. But after we turned in for the night, I heard Jesse on the radio. "Dispatcher, come back. This is Lorne, East Side Section crew." I sat up in my bunk and listened. "I think I see someone. About 40 yards out in the trees. There's a light, kinda swaying. Could be a lantern. Someone's out there." There was a pause, then static, then some half-asleep voice crackled back, probably someone at Central Dispatch telling him it was nothing. But Jesse didn't back down. "Negative, I see them walking. Close to the tracks, that last northbound just passed 20 minutes ago. They were right by the bend. If someone's out here, it's not safe." That got my attention. I got dressed and stepped outside. Couple other guys did too. The woods were pitch black. No wind. You couldn't see more than a few feet unless you had a headlamp. Mitch Carver, our foreman, came out last. Big guy, beard, always chewing sunflower seeds, kind of a hard-ass but fair. He looked Jesse over and said, "You sure you're not just seeing sparks from the wheels? That happens out here. Or moonlight catching something." Jesse shook his head. "It wasn't that. There was someone out there. I swear." Mitch looked off into the trees, squinting like he wanted to see something, or maybe like he already had, but didn't want to say it out loud. He told us to double-check the perimeter and head in. Ain't no one stupid enough to walk the tracks at night unless they want to die. If it was anything, they're long gone now. The next morning, Mitch was gone. We all assumed he'd headed out early to scout a drainage problem near mile marker 172. He mentioned it the day before. But when noon rolled around and no one had seen or heard from him, we started to worry. His truck was still there. His radio was in the cab. But no Mitch. We spread out and started searching, thinking maybe he slipped, broke a leg, something simple. It happens. But what we found wasn't simple at all. 20 feet from the tracks, right where the woods started up the slope, we found Mitch's vest, crumpled like it had been yanked off in a hurry. Next to it was his hard hat, cracked clean down the middle with blood smeared along the inside rim. Not a lot of blood, but enough to make your stomach turn. There were drag marks, not deep ones, just enough to suggest someone had been pulled or stumbled that way up the incline. But here's the weirdest part. Those tracks led into a patch of land with no access. No roads, no trails, just trees, rocks, and a steep climb that takes real effort. Jesse looked pale. He didn't say, "I told you so." He didn't need to. We called the sheriff. He brought 2 deputies and a search dog. Standard procedure, I guess. They spent most of the day out there, circling, calling Mitch's name, checking maps. The official word? Bear attack. They said maybe Mitch startled one. Got clipped in the head and wandered off injured. Happens, apparently. But none of us bought it. Not really. Bears don't drag you uphill. They don't avoid blood trails. And they don't carry lanterns. Jesse barely slept the next few nights. I could hear him moving around his trailer, pacing, sometimes just sitting outside with his headlamp on, staring into the woods. On our last night there, right before they reassigned our crew further east, Jesse came to my bunk, quietly, like a kid waking up his dad after a nightmare. He said, "I saw him again." I sat up. "Who?" "Not Mitch. The other guy. The one from the trees." I was out near the equipment trailer and I saw the same light. Same spot. But this time, it was closer. I asked if he saw a face. He shook his head. "No, just the shape." He was standing by the trees, not moving. Like he was waiting. The light was swinging a little, like it was hanging from his hand, but I never saw an arm. I didn't ask why he was out there alone again. I didn't need to. We both knew Jesse wasn't sleeping, not really. None of us were. After Mitch disappeared, it felt like the woods were always watching us, like something shifted, something subtle, but constant. About a month later, after we'd rotated out to a job in North Dakota, I got a call from a contact at the dispatcher's office, someone who used to work search and rescue in that part of Montana. She said hikers found something up near that same hill, maybe a quarter-mile past where we stopped searching. A boot, railroad issue, torn and weathered with dry blood on the laces. They sent it in for testing. It was Mitch's. No other remains were found. Just the boot. And a few snapped branches that looked placed, she said. Arranged. Almost like markers. She didn't say that part in her report, though. Said it sounded too weird. You spend enough time working out in the wild, and you start to feel things. The weight of trees pressing in at night. The way silence can hum louder than any train. There are places people aren't meant to stay long. Places where things are watching, not ghosts maybe, and not monsters either. Just something old. Something that doesn't want you there. I haven't been back to that section house since. I won't. Jesse quit rail work the next season. Said he needed to be around people more. I don't blame him. But sometimes I still think about that light, that faint, swinging glow out in the trees. And I wonder if it's still there, waiting for the next train.